Welcome to our speaker today, Lida Tohidi. She has 12 plus years experience in digital marketing, program management, and strategic planning, and has utilized her talents for nonprofits as well. Lida has deployed a variety of consumer and business products at organizations, both small and large. She was named one of the top 20 visionaries of media and tech industries. She's spoken at lots of different conferences from Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, ThoughtWorks, and more. And she's also very passionate about mindfulness, diversity, and inclusion in coaching, and has helped people land their dream roles. So Lida, welcome. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Take it away.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm so excited that you're here joining us. I'm just going to share my screen, and if there's any issues with not seeing the presentation, then feel free to pop them into chat. But we've tested this, so it has worked. Great. So in case you're wondering which room you're supposed to be in, hopefully you're in the right room. We're going to be discussing managing and achieving your marketing goals. So with that, again, welcome. I'm going to skip over this because Nicole did such a great job in introducing me. But as I've seen in the chat, there's a lot of Canadians and Americans here. I'm Canadian as well, currently in the US. So happy to have you all joining us. So I always have an agenda slide because I'm sure you're keen to know what we're going to spend our time on. So here is what we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about the challenge that this presents, but also the opportunity. I'm going to dive into marketing fundamentals, talk about funnel and metrics, discuss a little bit more about business to business marketing, as well as business to consumer or direct to consumer marketing. They're the same. Then talk about how content is the key that unlocks everything I'm about to share with you, and talk about quickly a masterclass that I have put together. So with that, let's kick it off. The challenge here, as I'm sure you can imagine, is to deliver complex concepts and skills that are typically learned on the job or in a lecture format, and to do so in 20 minutes. So just to give you some context, I delivered a version of this in a multi-hour workshop in Vancouver last year. So that's why I was invited back to speak and really jam-pack as much information as I could for you in 20 minutes. So I've done that. So it is a challenge, but as always, there's two sides to every coin. So it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to really discuss a framework that will help you in all areas of your life. And that, again, I'll allude to, but content is the word you want to take away from our session together. And I'm happy to stay in touch beyond the session, as I'm sure that would be something that may be of interest to you folks. So let's talk about marketing fundamentals. And you might be thinking I'm throwing you into the matrix, and some of you may not have a marketing background at all, and that's okay. I'm going to try to download as much of my dozen years of experience into your brain in 20 minutes as possible. So with that, there's some business fundamentals that are very important for you to know if you're going to be doing anything in marketing. So that involves knowing what types of businesses are out there. And there are three main types of businesses. You tend to hear about the first two the most. So there's business to business, so thus the acronym B2B. And that's, as the name implies, businesses selling to other businesses as their main clients. Then there's business to consumer or direct to consumer, so B2C or D2C. And as the name again implies, this is when products are being sold directly to a consumer and not to a business. Then there's this gray area where it's a business to consumer. So I've worked in this field for several years, especially as I'm sure most of you know, the healthcare industry in the US is actually a B2B2C model because there's a lot of payers and insurance and a lot of business components. And then the direct consumer is the end user of those health services. So that's one example of a business to consumer company or organization. And again, for most of you that are in the nonprofit world, you'll know that you tend to be in the first two categories, but it's really important to know that these are three main categories of businesses. So let's talk about the marketing funnel and some metrics. So this is not meant to overwhelm you, but it is meant to show you that any type of campaign, especially when it is, let's say, a business to business, or even in the case of nonprofits, a campaign that is multi-pronged and has multiple channels, can be pretty involved. And again, this is just a visual representation of a fictitious business, but you can see that opportunities funnel into accounts, and there's contacts all in those accounts, right? And the ideal thing that you would do is to both automate and personalize. So you can see the colors that are going from the contact to the channel and thus to the campaign. Not all of those are going directly from that person and showing the exact same thing to everyone. So in an ideal world, you're sending people through different channels. So it might be through events, whether remote like this one, or in person, hopefully in the near future, SEO like search engine optimization, email, organic, webinar, etc. There's a plethora of channels. And the ideal situation is if you're automating, so it's not like you're sending out each of these emails one by one, and personalizing, which means you know certain things about your consumer or your customer or your donor in many cases, and you're sending them the appropriate information at the appropriate times, and those campaigns are funneling through in the appropriate way. So some more fundamentals that are important to note are that ideally you are optimizing your channels, and that's exactly the point I alluded to. Also, some things to realize, and people don't tend to tell you this, but no channel is 100% independent. So there tends to be, as you saw here, some interdependencies and some different things that funnel into, let's say, campaign 1 that are coming from different channels, campaign 2 that are coming from other channels, right? And it's a multi-pronged effort. So in that sense, no channel, whether email or whether webinar, is exactly 100% independent. Again, I would say if you take nothing else from this presentation, just realize that content is key. Bill Gates had said in the 90s that content is king, and I will add a little asterisk and also say content is also queen. So however you want to call it, content is really the place where you can stand out, whether as a nonprofit or as a company. Having said that, there's no such thing as perfect data or perfect answers. So just as the world is imperfect, the world of marketing is also imperfect. So let's dive in a little bit more about this content piece and what that could look like in a B2B or a B2C scenario. And again, you can apply this directly to nonprofits as well, depending on who your end customer is. So here are some examples of real campaigns that different B2B companies have run, right? So on the top left corner, you see that there's a trade show obviously happening with several people that are there, as well as many organizations that are exhibiting. There's a world tour that Box, which is a B2B and B2C company actually, had run in the past. There's other types of events that you could see here that are captured. There is something almost like a quiz where you could get like a data quality score. You could see there's partnerships, let's say between Box and Office 365. There are infographics in the bottom right-hand corner. There are webinars kind of in the middle. And there's white papers, there's case studies, there's blog posts, and customer testimonials. So all of these could be seen as pieces of content that B2B organizations have run in the past. So these are all real life examples. As for B2C, here are some examples of campaigns and content that have gone out from direct to consumer companies. So you can see, the Lyft Be an Ambassador campaign with the pink mustache when they first came out as a company, which they have kind of no longer did, but I know since I was taking Lyft, you could see the cars because they would all have that pink mustache. And that's the way that they stood out. And that was everywhere on any campaign they did. On the left-hand side, you can see, let's say, a Spotify campaign that they ran during Valentine's Day. You can see other campaigns for, let's say, concerts or even events. There's other content campaigns that have been run on Facebook. So you could see the page for Personal Capital somewhere in the middle. Then you can see some apps and some, let's say, promos that are being offered if you drop an email. So there's a lot of different content and campaigns that have been run. These are just probably a dozen examples of some that have been run by business to consumer companies. So again, I really want to emphasize content as the key here. And one area that I think you can really, really excel is LinkedIn. And this is something that I've definitely updated my slides since last year, because LinkedIn has really made gains, especially this year, in launching a lot of new features. So I don't know if you're aware, but Microsoft bought them for over $20 billion. So it's a very, very hefty acquisition. And they're pumping a lot of that money back into the product of LinkedIn. I'm in no way sponsored by LinkedIn. Maybe I should be by the next time I do this talk, but it's something that I have personally been using first as a job seeker, 12 years ago, and then as a hiring manager, and most recently as an entrepreneur myself. So when I tend to recommend LinkedIn as a way that people, especially in nonprofit and even in businesses, can really stand out among all the other examples of platforms that I've alluded to and that I've actually worked with clients on, there tends to be four main issues. Issue number one, and it's one for a reason, is that folks, whether personally or for the company, or maybe even both, have a LinkedIn profile, but it's dormant. So it could be that it's been sitting there without any adjustments for months and sometimes even years. And don't worry if that applies to you, because again, this is the most common issue I see. The second issue is that folks are not regularly posting content on LinkedIn, even if they do have an active LinkedIn profile. The third issue, if you even are posting content, it's not consistent, and they're not posting any articles. Maybe they're just resharing other people's content. And issue number four, and I'm going to say this because, again, I have, like any platform you can think of, I've run ads on it for clients. I have done organic outreach. So I've been around the block in terms of all the platforms in the last dozen years. And I can guarantee you, and I have a lot of data to support this. So if you want, I can share with you the data if that's really important to you. But for the sake of time, I will say that LinkedIn beats Facebook, Instagram, and or Twitter out of the water in terms of attracting and converting leads for any study I've ever seen. So that's issue number four. So in case I haven't convinced you, here are some more stats of why LinkedIn and why now. So on LinkedIn, you can build relationships and share content with the world's professionals. Something that people don't tend to know is that 1 out of every professionals on the planet is currently on LinkedIn. And that includes a high number of senior business leaders, senior donors, philanthropists, etc. And as of now, LinkedIn has almost 680 million users. So this has gone up since I made these slides earlier this month. And the end goal for LinkedIn is actually to have 3 billion users. So now is a great time to jump on that LinkedIn bandwagon and really get as much as you can. And I would say for free for the majority of everything that I'm sharing with you. So what's the big deal? Like, why LinkedIn again? So a lot of people don't realize they might have the misconception that LinkedIn is just there when you want to go look for a job, or if you're a hiring manager hiring folks for a job. And that was the case maybe over a decade ago. But it is actually a professional social media platform. And unless you're counting Friendster, which came out just before, LinkedIn is actually the first social media platform. So it actually was there a couple of years even before Facebook was. And again, as I mentioned, it's moved beyond just a recruitment platform. Even if you use it for that, that's perfect. But I must say that definitely in the last few years, it's now the number one place where entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, small, medium business owners grow their network and their business. And something that might be important to note for you is that 4 out of 5 people on LinkedIn actually drive business decisions. And again, here's the piece that I would say, take this away from this presentation. Content is the key that really unlocks the full potential of LinkedIn. So it sounds like a lot, but only 3 million users on LinkedIn post every week. I mean, I'm obviously one of them because I'm sharing all this with you. But when you crunch the numbers, that's 0.4% of LinkedIn users. So it's quite small. And these same people are getting 9 billion, and that's why I capitalize it, 9 billion impressions every week for free, right? So that's several thousand impressions per person on average. And that's just organic, not running ads or anything. And at this point, you might be wondering, okay, Lida, but you've been doing this for a while. Obviously, you're posting on LinkedIn weekly and multiple times a week. But, what do I have to share? Well, I also want to share with you that of the 10,000 most shared articles on LinkedIn in the last 5 years, only 6% were written by influencers. So that means 94% of them were written by folks like you and me. So you don't have to be Bill Gates to, have a post that does well on LinkedIn. And if you crunch the math again a little more, you'll see that you can win more what I call algorithm love, which means that your post gets boosted organically by doing one thing, and that's you're getting that over 99.6% of LinkedIn users. So I'm pretty sure you can guess what that is. But again, I've run a really simple visual for you to show that you'd be in the most engaged 0.4% of LinkedIn users by posting weekly. So the blue is all the folks who are not actively posting, and the little red is all the people who are and really maximizing their presence on LinkedIn and their marketing and doing so for free. Again, you can opt to run ads, you can opt to get LinkedIn Premium, but you don't need to, because regardless of whether you have these things, you're going to be treated the same way by the algorithm, and you're going to get, again, be one of the few million users that are getting the 9 billion impressions per week. And probably that's going to increase by next year. So I hope I don't need to tell you again why you should really start sharing content on LinkedIn. And it could be as short as a tweet, right? Like the post I wrote yesterday was, I believe, 3 sentences. So I also repurposed it and put it on Twitter. So you don't need to do anything massive in order to post on LinkedIn. It could literally be a very short post, the same that you're probably putting even more effort to write on Facebook, Instagram, and or Twitter. So I'm definitely someone who prioritizes LinkedIn in order to get the most organic reach for anything I'm doing or planning to do. So I try to make these sessions as practical as possible. So in order to maximize your LinkedIn potential, and honestly to maximize your marketing potential for your organization as well, my challenge for you is to post once on LinkedIn this week. And my selfish ask is, if you enjoyed this content, feel free to tag me and add me on LinkedIn and post about it as well. Week 1, here are your sub pieces of your homework. Week 1, so this week, feel free to connect with me with a short note about where we met so you can reference this conference. Update your profile, so make sure that it's up to date with the 2020 information, and at least like or engage with one piece of content, right? I'm trying to give you like practical piece of homework that you actually take. Weeks 2 to 3 and beyond, because I know habits take some time to adjust. That's when I would say try your best to at least post once a week, and really it will pay in dividends. I can guarantee you, because I've seen it for myself and clients. I would also suggest following up with some connections where you think they would be great fits for being donors or customers. And you can also share content others have posted. That's really quick. You can literally do that in seconds, right? So this is kind of the action plan I would suggest for you. And this is really the best time to do this, because since the election in the US is over, there's a lot more space on these platforms to stand out, whereas the last quarter was the most, I would say, busy on all these platforms with ads and posts all about that. So this is like the best time to do it this year. And last but not least, I want to share a little bit more about LinkedIn. If you can imagine, I've been speaking about this for about 20 minutes, and I can literally speak about this for hours, and I have. So that's a LinkedIn Masterclass. It has a few hours of video brought to you by yours truly, and a couple hundred slides of content. Definitely doesn't mean to overwhelm you. It just means that there's a lot of actionable steps, as well as examples with all the data points of engagement, comments, likes, etc. I also provide templates, like literally you could word for word include those for connection requests, etc. I also share more about tools and give case studies. And again, this is all in service so that you can learn to be in the top 0.4% of users. And feel free to take down this link if that's of interest to you. So it's paidari.com/LinkedIn course. And Paidari is Persian for resilience, which is something that I can guarantee I needed this year when a client canceled out of the blue. And this is what freed up my time to create this masterclass. So Paidari is definitely a great name that I picked for my business several years ago. And in case you're curious, here are the modules in the masterclass. There's basically a dozen modules that I've jam-packed into 8, similar to today where I've jam-packed, a couple hours of information into 20 minutes. So if you're curious, feel free to take notes of what is included or take a screenshot. And with that, thank you for being here. I'm happy to share resources as well. If you're keen, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Please do so with a short note, because I literally have over 500 outstanding invitations of people I don't know. And so I don't accept them or ignore them, but please just note where we met. And if you would like, you can feel free to share any feedback. I'm always happy to improve these presentations and happy to receive any feedback. If you're more active on the other social media platforms, you can find me there as well, and feel free to connect that way. So yeah, I wish you all the best. This was a gift that showed the cat grabbing the pancake, but so I'll just share with you that that's my analogy for grabbing your sweet success. And again, feel free to connect online. So I will stop sharing my presentation, and now I will have a chance to also look into the Q&A.
Excellent. Lida, thank you so much. That is a lot of solid content in 20 minutes. You powered through that, and thanks for sharing those links. Looks like, let's see, we'll try to add those into chat just once more. Or if you have a chance, Lida, maybe to add it in chat so it's easy for people to click out, that would be fantastic. So sure. It's time for Q&A. We've got 5 minutes here before we head into our second tracks here. So let's kick things off with this first question. Let's say you only have like 30 minutes a day to spare. Like, doing LinkedIn is a new-ish thing for you. 30 minutes to spare a day. Like, what does that schedule look like? Like, what are you going to be doing in those 30-minute days or 30-minute sessions?
I wish there were 30-minute work days. Yeah, so I try to batch my, all of the social media posts within about half an hour or so. So that's a great suggestion, is to try to batch them. And again, I'm a big fan of repurposing content. So basically, unless I have something like really verbose to say, I will use the same few sentences on Twitter. I will add the relevant hashtags. I will paste that into Facebook, remove the hashtags, because though they're a thing on Facebook, it just looks a little off. Same thing, copy and paste into Instagram, upload the right type of graphic or photo. And then the same, I would generally make sure that on Instagram, I'm having the right dimensions, and I would paste the same content into LinkedIn. Again, you have to be a little wary about using hashtags everywhere, just because, especially on Facebook, I would say it looks a little spammy if you include those. Whereas the other 3 main platforms, it's really within half an hour, I can bang out those 4 platforms. I must admit that I tend to be much more active on LinkedIn, just because I've seen exponential results compared to the others. But that's how I would recommend you go about your content creation on social media.
Great. Let's move to this question from Miguel. Miguel asks, can you provide some tips on creating interesting content?
Yes, I can. In the span of this time, we just don't have time. So I would again recommend that you go onto this page. There are over a dozen examples of exactly what you're asking for, Miguel, and I'm sure this is a question for others. So feel free to sign up for free. I've made it available for this week, and it's a pop-up that shows up that you get access to. So I believe it sends you 3 emails, one today, one tomorrow, one the following day, of exactly what you're asking for. And then if then you're curious and you actually want to sign up for the full masterclass, you can. So rather than butchering and trying to give you a dozen examples in 30 seconds, feel free to drop your email and get those in a 5-minute and a 10-minute video.
There we have it. Yeah. Excellent. All right. So we've got, let's see, about 1 more minute and we'll return to the agenda tab, where you're going to find your next expert session that you'd like to attend. So let's see, maybe we can just wrap there. I think everyone has the information they need to get in touch with you, Lida, and to get those resources. So Lida, thank you so much for being here with us. Really appreciate it.